You're not welcome here." The mercantile owner's voice cut through the rain like a blade. Lydia Carver stood frozen in the doorway, water streaming down her face, her twisted leg throbbing with each heartbeat. She'd walked 4 miles in the storm, desperate for work. Any work. The man's eyes traveled down to her leg, then back up with disgust. "We don't hire cripples. Move along before you scare off the customers." Behind him, 3 women whispered and turned their backs. Lydia's hand gripped the doorframe, not from weakness, but from rage she'd swallowed for 16 years. Before we continue Lydia's story, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. And comment below with the city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's see what happens when Lydia refuses to disappear. Lydia didn't move. Her fingers stayed locked on the doorframe, knuckles white against the weathered wood. The mercantile owner took a step forward, his face reddening. "I said, move along." "I heard you." Lydia's voice came out steady, surprising even herself. "I'm just wondering if you treat all your customers this way, or if it's only the ones you think won't fight back." The 3 women gasped. The owner's mouth opened, then closed. He wasn't used to cripples who talked back. "Now you listen here." "No," Lydia straightened, ignoring the fire shooting up her leg. "You listen. I walked 4 miles in this storm because the last 3 towns told me the same thing you're about to say. That I'm not good enough. That nobody wants to look at me. That I should just disappear." She took a breath, her chest heaving. "But I'm still here. And I'm still asking, do you have work or not?" The silence stretched like wire about to snap. Rain hammered the roof. Somewhere in the back of the store, a clock ticked. The owner's face had gone from red to purple.
"Get out of my store before I throw you out."
"You'll have to," Lydia said quietly, "because I'm done walking away."
"Thomas, what's all this noise about?"
A woman emerged from the back room, wiping her hands on her apron. She stopped when she saw Lydia. Her expression didn't change. No pity, no disgust, just calculation.
"You looking for work?"
"Yes, ma'am."
"Can you sew?"
"Yes, ma'am."
"Can you lift a bolt of fabric?"
"Yes, ma'am." The woman, Thomas's wife, Lydia guessed, turned to her husband.
"Then hire her. We need help with the alterations, and I'm 3 weeks behind."
She looked back at Lydia.
$5 a week, room in the back. You start tomorrow."
Thomas sputtered. "Martha, you can't be serious."
"I'm deadly serious. This girl walked 4 miles in a storm to ask for work. That's more determination than you've shown in 6 months.
Martha crossed her arms.
"Hire her, or I'll run this store myself and you can find somewhere else to sleep."
The 3 women whispered louder. Thomas looked between his wife and Lydia, his face working through emotions like a storm passing over mountains. Finally, he waved his hand in defeat. "Fine, but she works in the back. I don't want her scaring customers." Lydia's throat tightened. She'd won, but the victory tasted like ash. Martha gave her a look that said, "It's the best you're going to get in this town."
"Thank you," Lydia managed. "I'll start tomorrow."
She turned to leave, her legs screaming with every step. Behind her, she heard Thomas mutter something about charity cases and Martha's sharp response. The rain hit her face as she stepped outside, washing away the tears she refused to shed in front of them. The boarding house was another mile away. Lydia had enough money for 2 more nights, maybe 3 if she didn't eat much. After that, she'd have the job. It wasn't what she'd dreamed of, nothing ever was, but it was something. It was survival. She made it half a block before her leg gave out. The pain that had been building all day finally crashed through her willpower, and she stumbled against the side of a building, gasping. The rain pounded harder, soaking through her thin coat. Her fingers clutched at the rough wood, trying to find purchase, trying to stay upright. "You all right?" Lydia's head snapped up. A man stood a few feet away, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a long coat and a hat pulled low against the rain. His face was shadowed, but his voice carried something she hadn't heard in years: genuine concern. "I'm fine," she said automatically. The words every woman learned to say, whether they meant them or not. "You don't look fine." He took a step closer, and she saw his face. Blue eyes, the color of sky after a storm. A weathered face that had seen hard work and harder times. Somewhere in his 30s, maybe older. "You need help?" "I said I'm fine." Lydia pushed away from the wall, took one step, and her leg buckled again. This time, strong hands caught her before she hit the ground. "Easy." The man's grip was firm but gentle. "When's the last time you ate something?" Lydia tried to pull away, but her body wasn't cooperating. "That's none of your business." "You're about to pass out in the rain. That makes it my business." He adjusted his hold, taking more of her weight. "There's a cafe 2 buildings down. Come on." "I don't have money for—" "Did I ask if you had money?" He started walking, half supporting her, moving slow enough that her twisted leg could keep pace. "I'm Elias Brick. I own the ranch outside town." "And you are?" "Nobody." The word came out bitter. "Just another cripple nobody wants to look at." Elias stopped walking. His hand on her arm tightened, not painful, but enough to make her look at him. "That's not what I asked. I asked your name." Something in his voice made Lydia's defenses crack. "Lydia." "Lydia Carver." "Well, Lydia Carver, I'm taking you to get some food. Then we're going to talk about why a woman with your determination is calling herself nobody." He started walking again. "Because from where I'm standing, you look like somebody who just backed down a mercantile owner in front of half the town gossips. That takes guts." Lydia's mind raced. She'd learned early that men who offered help usually wanted something in return. But Elias's grip wasn't possessive, wasn't cruel. It was steady. Like he was used to holding things up, keeping things from falling. "You were watching?" "I was waiting for the rain to let up before heading home. Saw the whole thing through the window." He pulled open the cafe door with one hand, still supporting her with the other. "Saw Martha put Thomas in his place, too. That was something." The warmth inside the cafe hit Lydia like a wall. Her clothes were soaked through, her leg was on fire, and she suddenly realized how close she'd been to collapsing in the street. Elias guided her to a table in the corner, away from the few other customers, and pulled out a chair. "Sit. I'll order." Lydia wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she didn't need his charity, but her body had other ideas. She sank into the chair, and the relief was so intense she almost cried out. Elias moved to the counter, spoke quietly to the woman working there, then returned with 2 cups of coffee. "Food's coming." He sat across from her, pushing 1 cup into her hands. "Drink that. You're shaking." Lydia wrapped her fingers around the warm ceramic, feeling sensations slowly return to her hands. Elias watched her, not with pity, but with something else. Assessment, maybe. Like he was taking her measure. "How long since you ate?" he asked again. "Yesterday. Breakfast." She took a sip of the coffee, black and bitter and perfect. "I'm starting work tomorrow at the mercantile. I'll be fine." "Working for Thomas." Elias's mouth tightened. "That's going to be rough." "I've had rough before." "I don't doubt it." He leaned back in his chair. "Let me ask you something, Lydia. Can you cook?" The question was so unexpected that Lydia almost dropped her cup. "What?" "Can you cook? Basic food, nothing fancy. Eggs, bacon, stew, bread if you know how." Yes, I can cook. Why?" Elias was quiet for a moment, his blue eyes studying her face. Because I need someone at the ranch who can. My brother Holden and I have been living on burned meat and stale biscuits for 6 months. The last cook we had quit after a week, said the place was too isolated, too much work, too far from town. He took a drink of his coffee. Pays $8 a week, room and board included. You'd have your own cabin, small but solid. Works hard but fair. And nobody's going to call you a charity case or tell you to hide in the back.
Lydia's heart hammered against her ribs. $8 was more than the mercantile. Room and board meant no more boarding house payments, no more struggling to afford meals. But she'd learned to be suspicious of offers that sounded too good. "Why me?" Her voice came out harder than she intended. "You don't know me. For all you know, I'm a terrible cook."
Maybe. Elias didn't flinch. But I watched you stand up to Thomas when most people would have just walked away. I watched you refuse to give up, even when your leg was about to give out. That tells me you've got backbone. And backbone matters more than perfect biscuits.
"I can't."
Lydia stopped, the words tangling in her throat.
"I can't do heavy labor. I can cook, I can clean, but I can't haul water or chop wood or—"
"I've got ranch hands for heavy labor," Elias cut in. "I need someone to keep the house running, make sure there's food on the table, keep things organized. Holden and I have been so focused on the cattle that the house has turned into a disaster. We need help, and you need a job that doesn't involve working for a man who's going to make your life hell." He leaned forward. "This isn't charity, Lydia. This is a job offer, a real one." The cafe owner brought 2 plates of food, steak, potatoes, and vegetables that steamed in the cool air. Lydia stared at the plate, her stomach cramping with sudden hunger. She couldn't remember the last time she'd seen this much food at once. "Eat," Elias said, "then think about it. But I'm heading back to the ranch in an hour, and the offer leaves with me." Lydia picked up her fork, her hands trembling. The first bite of steak nearly made her moan. She forced herself to eat slowly, to not devour it like a starving animal, even though that's exactly what she felt like. Elias ate too, not watching her struggle, giving her space to think. Could she really do this? Leave the mercantile job before she'd even started? Trust a man she'd just met, go to a ranch miles outside town where nobody would hear her scream if things went wrong? But what was the alternative? Work for Thomas, who'd already made it clear she was less than human in his eyes? Save every penny for months just to have enough to move to the next town, where she'd face the same rejection all over again. "What's the catch?" she asked finally, setting down her fork. "Men don't offer jobs to crippled women out of the goodness of their hearts. So what do you really want?" Elias met her eyes, and she saw something there she hadn't expected. Respect. "The catch is that it's hard work. Cooking for 5 people 3 times a day, keeping the house clean, doing laundry, mending clothes. The ranch is isolated. Nearest neighbor is 3 miles away. Winter's coming, and we get snowed in for weeks at a time. If you can't handle being alone with your thoughts, you'll go crazy." He paused. "And the ranch hands can be rough. They're good men, but they're not used to having a woman around. You'll need to hold your own." "I've been holding my own since I was 7 years old," Lydia said, "when everyone else decided I wasn't worth their time." "Then you'll do fine." Elias pushed his empty plate away. "So what's it going to be? The mercantile or the ranch?" Lydia's mind spun. Everything in her screamed that this was too easy, too perfect, that men like Elias didn't exist. But another part of her, the part that had kept her alive through 16 years of rejection, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was her chance. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "and it doesn't work out, you bring me back to town. No questions, no arguments." "Deal." Elias held out his hand. "And if you say yes, you tell Martha you're not taking the mercantile job. She deserves to know." Lydia looked at his hand, large and calloused from hard work. This was the moment. The choice that would change everything, for better or worse. She took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, steady. "I'll take the ranch job." Elias smiled, and it transformed his face from weathered to almost boyish. "Good. Finish your food. Then we'll head to the boarding house to get your things. We'll be at the ranch before dark." Lydia ate the rest of her meal in a daze. Elias paid the cafe owner, helped her back out into the rain, which had lightened to a drizzle, and walked with her to the mercantile. Martha was surprised but understanding when Lydia explained. Thomas looked relieved. At the boarding house, Lydia gathered her few possessions: 2 dresses, a spare set of underclothes, a brush, and the small wooden box that held her mother's wedding ring. Everything fit in one worn carpet bag. Elias had a wagon waiting outside.
He helped her up onto the bench seat, then climbed up beside her and took the reins. As they rolled out of Silver Ridge, Lydia looked back at the town that had rejected her one more time. Then she turned forward, toward the ranch, toward whatever came next. The road was rough. Lydia's leg ached with every jolt of the wagon, but she didn't complain. Elias didn't try to fill the silence with meaningless chatter. He just drove, occasionally pointing out landmarks: a stand of cottonwoods that marked good water, a hill where eagles nested, a meadow where the best grass grew. "Tell me about Holden," Lydia said finally. "Your brother." Elias's expression shifted, something complicated passing over his features. "Holden's younger, 26. He's intense. Takes everything seriously, including the ranch. We lost our father 2 years ago, and Holden took it hard. Threw himself into work, stopped talking much, stopped smiling." He was quiet for a moment. "He needs someone around who'll stand up to him, who won't let him turn into a ghost." "And you think I'm that person?" "I think you're someone who knows what it's like to get knocked down and keep getting up. Holden could learn from that." They rode in silence for a while longer. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The ranch appeared in the distance. A main house, a barn, several outbuildings, and the small cabin set apart from the rest. "That's yours," Elias said, pointing to the cabin. "Needs some work, but it's sound. Fireplace works, roof doesn't leak. I'll get it cleaned up tomorrow." "I can clean it myself." "I know you can. But you're starting as cook, and that means you need to rest tonight so you can handle breakfast in the morning." He pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the main house. "Come on. I'll introduce you to Holden, show you the kitchen, get you settled." Lydia climbed down from the wagon, her legs screaming after the long ride. Elias took her bag and led her to the front door. Inside, the house was exactly as he'd described, functional but chaotic. Dishes piled in the sink, dust on every surface, clothes draped over chairs. "Holden!" Elias called. "Get in here!" Footsteps on the stairs, and then a younger version of Elias appeared. Same blue eyes, same broad shoulders, but with a hardness around the mouth that spoke of too much responsibility, too young. Holden stopped when he saw Lydia, his eyes narrowing. "Who's this?" "This is Lydia Carver. She's our new cook." Elias set down the bag. "Lydia, this is my brother, Holden." Holden's gaze traveled down to Lydia's leg, then back up. His expression didn't change. "Can she cook?" "Better than you," Elias said. "Show some manners." "I don't have time for manners. I have a barn to repair before the snow hits." Holden looked at Lydia again. "You start breakfast at 5. Don't be late." He walked out without another word. Elias sighed. "Don't take it personally. He's like that with everyone." "I've had worse," Lydia said, though her stomach had tightened at Holden's cold reception. This was going to be harder than she thought. Elias showed her the kitchen, the pantry stocked with basics, the dishes in pots and pans. He explained the schedule:
Breakfast at 5:30, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. The ranch hands ate in the bunkhouse, but Elias and Holden took their meals in the main house. "Any questions?" he asked. Lydia looked around the messy kitchen, at the pile of work waiting for her, at the life she'd just walked into with a man she barely knew. "Just one. Why did you really offer me this job?" Elias was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low. "Because I watched you refuse to disappear. And I thought, maybe that's what this place needs. Someone who won't give up." He met her eyes.
Was I wrong?
Lydia thought about the 16 years of rejection. The doors slammed in her face. The people who'd turned their backs, who'd called her worthless, who'd told her to disappear. She thought about the girl she'd been at 7, before the accident, full of dreams and hope. And she thought about the woman she'd become, harder, colder, but still standing. "No," she said finally, "you weren't wrong." Elias smiled again, that same transformation. "Good. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." He left her alone in the kitchen. Lydia stood there for a moment, surrounded by dirty dishes and dust and the smell of a life half-lived. Then she rolled up her sleeves and got to work. By midnight, the kitchen gleamed. Lydia's hands were raw from scrubbing, her leg throbbed with a vengeance. But she'd made a promise to herself years ago. Never give them a reason to say she couldn't do the work. She ran her fingers along the clean counter, then limped to the cabin Elias had pointed out. The door stuck. She had to throw her weight against it twice before it gave way, revealing a space smaller than she'd expected, but mercifully clean. Someone, Elias probably, had left blankets on the narrow bed, a lantern on the table, and firewood stacked beside the stone fireplace. Lydia lit the lantern, then the fire, and watched the flames catch and spread. She'd done it. She'd actually found work that paid decent money, that came with shelter, that didn't require her to hide in the back like something shameful. But as she sank onto the bed, exhaustion crashing through her, doubt crept in like smoke. What if she couldn't keep up? What if Holden made her life hell? What if Elias realized he'd made a mistake? She pushed the thoughts away and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would come, whether she was ready or not. 4:30 came too soon. Lydia's body screamed protest as she dragged herself from bed. But she'd learned long ago that pain was just noise. She dressed in the dim pre-dawn light, braided her hair, and made her way to the main house. The ranch was silent, except for the wind and the distant sound of cattle. The kitchen was dark. Lydia lit the lamps, stoked the stove that had gone cold overnight, and opened the pantry. Flour, eggs, bacon, potatoes, coffee. She could work with this. By 5:15, the smell of frying bacon filled the kitchen. By 5:25, biscuits were in the oven and coffee was brewing. Lydia set the table for 2, then 3 when she remembered the ranch hands ate in the bunkhouse. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, muscle memory from years of cooking in boarding houses and temporary jobs that never lasted. At 5:30 exactly, Elias came down the stairs. He stopped in the doorway, taking in the clean kitchen, the food on the table, the fresh coffee.
You didn't have to clean last night.
I couldn't sleep in a dirty kitchen. Lydia poured him coffee, handed him the cup. Breakfast is ready. Where's your plate? I'll eat after you and Holden finish. The hell you will. Elias pulled out a chair. You work here, you eat here. With us. Before Lydia could argue, Holden appeared. He looked like he'd been awake for hours, his clothes dusty, his face hard. He glanced at the food, then at Lydia. You made all this? That's what I was hired to do. Holden sat without another word and started eating. Elias caught Lydia's eye and gave her a look that said, "I told you he's like this with everyone." She fixed herself a plate and sat at the far end of the table, where she could leave quickly if needed. The biscuits were perfect, fluffy inside, golden outside, the way her mother had taught her. Holden took 3, Elias took 4.
Neither of them said anything, but the speed at which the food disappeared told Lydia everything she needed to know. "The barn roof's got a hole the size of a wagon wheel," Holden said finally, his voice flat. "I need to patch it before the next rain." "I'll help after I check the north fence," Elias replied. "We lost 2 head last week to that gap. We can't afford to lose any more." Something in Holden's tone made Lydia look up. The brothers exchanged a glance, quick, but weighted with meaning she couldn't decode. Money troubles, maybe. Most ranches had them. "I'll make lunch for the road," she said, "if you're working far out." "We'll be back by noon," Elias stood, draining his coffee. "But thanks for thinking of it." Holden pushed back from the table without a word and headed for the door. Elias paused. "That was the best meal we've had in 6 months. Thank you." Then he was gone, leaving Lydia alone with the dirty dishes and the realization that she'd just survived her first test. The morning passed in a blur of work. Dishes, laundry, sweeping, organizing the chaos that had accumulated in every corner of the house. Lydia's leg protested every step, but she pushed through. She'd survived worse pain. She'd survived this. At 11, she started preparing lunch. Stew, because it was easy to keep warm, and more biscuits. She was rolling out the dough when she heard voices outside. Not Elias and Holden, but rougher, louder. The door banged open. 3 men stumbled in, tracking mud across her clean floor. Ranch hands, she guessed from their clothes. They stopped when they saw her. "Well, well," the tallest one grinned, showing tobacco-stained teeth. "Looks like Elias finally got himself a woman." "I'm the cook," Lydia said, keeping her voice level. "Lunch won't be ready until noon." "We ain't here for lunch." The man moved closer, his eyes traveling over her in a way that made her skin crawl. "We're here to see what Elias dragged home from town." "His name's Wade," another man said, younger, apologetic. "Don't mind him. He's just curious." "I can speak for myself, Danny." Wade stepped closer still, close enough that Lydia could smell the whiskey on his breath. "So what's wrong with you that you ended up working here?" Lydia's hands stilled on the dough. She'd heard variations of this question 1,000 times, usually from people who thought her disability gave them permission to be cruel. "Nothing's wrong with me," she said quietly. "Now get out of my kitchen before I tell Elias you were drinking before noon." Wade's grin widened. "She's got spirit. I like that." He reached out, grabbed her wrist. "Let's see what else." Lydia's other hand shot out, grabbing the rolling pin. She brought it down hard on Wade's forearm. He yelped and jerked back, cursing. "Touch me again and I'll break more than your arm." The third man, older, gray-haired, started laughing. "She got you good, Wade. Maybe you should listen when a lady says no." Wade's face had gone red. "You bitch!" "What's going on here?" Holden's voice cut through the tension like a knife through butter. He stood in the doorway, his expression thunderous. "Nothing," Wade said quickly. "Just introducing ourselves to the new cook." "By grabbing her?" Holden moved into the room, and suddenly the space felt smaller. "Get out. All 3 of you." "Holden, we were just out. Now. And if I hear you've been bothering her again, you're fired. All of you." The men left, Wade shooting Lydia a look that promised this wasn't over. The older man tipped his hat to her on the way out. Danny just looked embarrassed. When they were gone, Holden turned to Lydia. For the first time since she'd arrived, something other than coldness showed in his eyes. Concern, maybe. Or respect. "You all right?" "I'm fine." Lydia set down the rolling pin, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. "I've handled worse." "I don't doubt it.
Holden moved to the stove, poured himself coffee. Wade's a drunk and a troublemaker, but he's good with horses, so Elias keeps him on. Just stay away from him when he's been drinking. I'll stay away from him all the time. Holden almost smiled. Almost. Smart. He took a drink, watching her over the rim of his cup. You really hit him with a rolling pin? Would have hit him harder if you hadn't shown up. This time, Holden did smile. Just a flicker, there and gone, but real. Maybe you'll last longer than the others after all. He left before she could ask what he meant by the others. Lydia returned to her dough, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She'd stood up to Wade, but the look in his eyes when he left told her this was just the beginning. Lunch came and went. Elias and Holden ate quickly. Their conversation centered on fence repairs and cattle counts. They didn't mention Wade, and Lydia didn't bring it up. She was still the new hire, still on probation, still one mistake away from being sent back to town. After they left, she cleaned the kitchen again, then tackled the upstairs bedrooms. Elias's room was neat, almost military in its precision. Holden's was a disaster. Clothes everywhere, papers scattered across the desk, a layer of dust on everything. She changed the sheets, gathered the dirty clothes, and was making the bed when something caught her eye. A photograph on the nightstand. 3 people. A man who looked like an older version of Elias and Holden, and 2 boys, maybe 10 and 6 years old. The younger one was grinning. The older one looked serious even then. That's our father. Holden's voice made her jump. He stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Died 2 years ago. Kicked by a horse he was trying to break.
I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate, but what else could she say? Don't be. He knew the risks. Holden moved into the room, picked up the photograph. Elias thinks I can't let him go. Maybe he's right. But this ranch, it's all we have left of him. If we lose it, we lose everything. The admission hung in the air between them, raw and unexpected. Lydia realized this was the most Holden had said to her since she arrived. You won't lose it, she heard herself say. You and Elias won't let that happen. You sound sure. I am. Lydia met his eyes. Because I've watched people give up, and neither of you have that look. Holden studied her for a long moment. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone softer, someone who'd run at the first sign of trouble. He set down the photograph. But you hit Wade with a rolling pin, so maybe Elias was right about you. Before Lydia could ask what Elias had said, Holden was gone, his boots heavy on the stairs. She finished making the bed, then stood there looking at the photograph of the smiling boy who'd grown into a man who'd forgotten how to smile. The afternoon stretched long. Lydia prepared dinner, swept the porch, and was carrying water from the well when Wade appeared. He was alone this time, and the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the yard. Didn't think you'd last the day, he said, blocking her path. But here you are. Get out of my way. See, that's what I don't understand. Wade moved closer, forcing her to back up. You're just a crippled girl. Why does Elias treat you like you're something special? Lydia's grip tightened on the water bucket. Her leg was screaming after a full day of work, and she didn't have the energy for this. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Wade's smile was ugly. Elias never hires women. Never. Says they're more trouble than they're worth. But then he brings you here, gives you the good cabin, tells us all to leave you alone. He leaned in, his breath hot on her face. So what did you do? What did you promise him? The implication hit her like a slap. Nothing. I didn't promise him anything. Liar. Wade grabbed the bucket, yanked it from her hands. Water sloshed over both of them. You're just like all the others.
using what you've got to get what you want.
The others?
Lydia's mind raced.
How many cooks has Elias hired?
Wade's smile turned vicious. Oh, he didn't tell you? You're number 6 in 8 months. The others all quit, couldn't handle the isolation, couldn't handle the work. He threw the bucket down, the metal clanging against the hard ground. But I think you'll quit for a different reason. Because you'll figure out that Elias is using you, too. He always does. Wade! Elias's voice cracked like a whip. He strode across the yard, his face dark with fury. I told you to stay away from her.
I was just talking.
You were harassing her. Get your gear and get off my ranch. You're fired. Wade's face went white.
Elias, you can't.
I can and I am. You've got 1 hour to clear out before I throw you out myself. Wade looked between Elias and Lydia, his expression twisting into something hateful. This isn't over, he said to Lydia. Then he turned and stalked toward the bunkhouse. Elias picked up the bucket, his jaw tight. Are you hurt?
No.
Lydia's voice came out steadier than she felt.
But he said something about me being the 6th cook in 8 months.
Elias went still. He told you that?
Is it true?
The silence stretched. Elias wouldn't meet her eyes, and that told her everything she needed to know. It's true, he said finally. I've hired 5 cooks since my father died. None of them lasted more than 3 weeks.
Why didn't you tell me?
Because if I had, you wouldn't have come. Elias looked at her then, and the exhaustion in his face was devastating. And I needed you to come, because I'm drowning here, Lydia. This ranch is bleeding money. Holden's working himself to death, and I can't keep everything together by myself. His voice cracked. So yes, I hired you knowing you might leave like the others. But I was hoping, I was praying that maybe you'd be different. Lydia's throat tightened. She thought about the 16 years of rejection, the doors slammed in her face, the people who'd used her desperation against her. She thought about how easy it would be to walk away right now, to demand Elias take her back to town, to add him to the list of people who'd disappointed her. But she also thought about the way he'd caught her in the rain, the way he'd bought her food without asking for anything in return, the way he'd called this a real job and meant it. I'm not the others, she said quietly, and I don't quit. Elias's eyes searched her face.
Even though I wasn't completely honest?
Even though. Lydia took the bucket from his hands. But no more secrets. If this ranch is in trouble, I need to know. If there's something I should be worried about, tell me. I can't help if I don't know what I'm fighting. Deal. Elias's shoulders sagged with relief. And thank you for staying. Don't thank me yet. I might still hit you with a rolling pin. He laughed, and the sound was warm and unexpected. Fair enough. They walked back to the house together, the bucket swinging between them. Behind them, Wade was loading his gear onto a horse, cursing loud enough for the whole ranch to hear. Lydia didn't look back. She'd spent too much of her life looking back. That night, after dinner was finished and the dishes were clean, Lydia sat in her cabin and let herself feel the weight of the day. Her leg throbbed. Her hands ached. Every muscle screamed exhaustion. But she'd made it through. She'd stood up to Wade. She'd learned the truth about the other cooks, and she'd chosen to stay anyway. She pulled out her mother's wedding ring, held it up to the firelight. Her mother had worn it for 20 years, through poverty and hardship and disappointment. She'd never taken it off, not even at the end. I'm still here, Mama, Lydia whispered. I'm still fighting. The ring glinted gold in the darkness, and for just a moment, Lydia let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found a place where fighting was enough. Morning came with frost on the windows and the sound of Holden cursing in the barn. Lydia pulled herself from bed, her body protesting every movement after yesterday's work. She dressed quickly, braided her hair with fingers that barely cooperated, and made her way through the pre-dawn darkness to the main house. The kitchen was cold. She built up the fire, set coffee to brew, and was pulling eggs from the pantry when she heard voices outside.
Not Elias and Holden. Sharper, angrier.
She moved to the window and saw 3 men on horses, one of them Wade. Her chest tightened. He'd come back. The door banged open before she could move. Wade stormed in, 2 men flanking him, and his face was twisted with rage. "Where's Elias?" "Not here." Lydia's hand found the knife she'd been using to slice bacon. "And you're not welcome." "I don't give a damn what you think." Wade took a step closer. "That bastard fired me without pay. He owes me 3 weeks' wages." "Then take it up with him, not me." One of Wade's companions, a heavy-set man with mean eyes, laughed. "She's got nerve, Wade. Maybe you should have been nicer." "Shut up, Garrett." Wade's eyes never left Lydia. "I want my money. Now." "I don't have access to—" "Don't lie to me." Wade grabbed the kitchen table, flipped it. Dishes crashed to the floor. Coffee cups shattered. The sound exploded through the quiet house like gunfire.
"I know Elias keeps the cash box in here somewhere. So you're going to tell me where or what?"
Holden stood in the doorway, his rifle leveled at Wade's chest. "You're going to threaten her? On my ranch?" Wade froze. Garrett and the 3rd man backed toward the door. But Wade's face hardened. "You owe me wages." "I owe you nothing. You were drunk on the job, you harassed the cook, and you're lucky I didn't have you arrested." Holden's voice was ice. "Now get out before I shoot you for trespassing." "This isn't over." Holden fired. The bullet hit the floor 6 inches from Wade's boot. The crack echoed through the kitchen, and Lydia's ears rang from the blast. Wade stumbled backward, his face going white. "The next one goes through your knee," Holden said quietly. "Your choice." Wade ran. His companions were already on their horses, and within seconds, all 3 were gone, leaving behind overturned furniture and broken dishes. Holden lowered the rifle.
His hands were shaking.
"You hurt?"
"No." Lydia's voice came out steadier than she felt.
"But your floor needs sweeping." Holden looked at her, then at the destruction, then back at her. His mouth twitched. "You're making jokes. After someone just threatened you with a rifle in the room. Would you prefer I cry? I'd prefer you weren't so damn calm about almost dying." But there was something in his voice, not anger, but concern, real concern. "I've had worse." Lydia set down the knife, started gathering the broken dishes. "Though I'll need to make breakfast again from scratch." "Forget breakfast." Holden set the rifle against the wall, started righting the table. "Wade's not done. He's the type who holds grudges. And Garrett, the heavy one? He's connected to some bad people in Cheyenne." "Bad how?" "The kind who don't mind breaking the law if the price is right." Holden met her eyes. "I'm telling you this because you need to know what you're in the middle of. This ranch, we're barely holding on. My father left us with debt and bad deals, and we've been fighting to keep our heads above water for 2 years. People know that, and some of them, like Wade and Garrett, they think they can push us around because we're vulnerable." "Are you?" Lydia asked quietly. "Vulnerable?" Holden was silent for a long moment. "We're 3 payments behind on the bank loan. If we don't make the next payment in 30 days, we lose everything." The admission hung between them, raw and dangerous. Lydia's mind raced. 3 payments behind. 30 days. No wonder Elias looked exhausted. "Does Elias know you're telling me this?" Elias would kill me if he knew. Holden picked up the last of the broken dishes. But you chose to stay. That means you're part of this now, whether either of us likes it or not. And you deserve to know what you're fighting for. Before Lydia could respond, Elias burst through the door. His face was flushed, his clothes covered in dust.
I heard a shot. He stopped, taking in the destruction. What happened?
Wade came back for his wages, Holden said, with Garrett and another man. They threatened Lydia. I encouraged them to leave. Encouraged. Elias's voice was dangerous. You shot at them. I shot at the floor. Wade left on his own 2 feet. Be grateful. The brothers stared at each other, and Lydia saw something pass between them that spoke of old arguments and deeper wounds. Finally, Elias turned to her. Did he hurt you? He flipped a table. Holden stopped him before anything else happened. Lydia straightened, her leg aching from standing still too long. But we need to talk. About the ranch, the debt, and why you thought I'd be better off not knowing. Elias's face darkened. Holden told you. Someone had to, Holden said. She lives here now. She deserves the truth. The truth is, I'm handling it. Elias's voice rose.
I've been handling everything since Father died, and I don't need you undermining me by spreading panic.
Panic? Holden moved closer, his own voice rising to match. I'm trying to prepare her for what's coming. Because when Wade comes back, and he will come back, she needs to know why. She needs to know that we're not just fighting to keep a ranch. We're fighting to keep everything our father built. Our father ran this place into the ground, Elias shouted. The words exploded out of him like they'd been locked away too long. He made deals with the wrong people, borrowed money we couldn't repay, and then he died and left us to clean up his mess. So don't talk to me about what Father built. I'm the one trying to save what's left. Holden's face went white. He did the best he could. His best wasn't good enough. Elias's hands were shaking. And I'm drowning trying to make up for it.
So excuse me if I didn't want to burden the new cook with our financial problems on her second day.
The silence that followed was suffocating. Holden turned and walked out without another word. The door slammed behind him, hard enough to rattle the windows. Elias stood there, his chest heaving, his eyes bright with something that might have been tears. Lydia watched him struggle to compose himself, watched him rebuild the walls that had just cracked wide open. I'm sorry, he said finally. You shouldn't have seen that. Why not? Lydia moved to the stove, started rebuilding breakfast from what hadn't been destroyed. Because I'm just the cook? Because I'm not really part of this? Because you've got enough to worry about without taking on our problems too. Maybe. Lydia cracked eggs into a pan, her movements precise despite her shaking hands. Or maybe I've spent 16 years being treated like I'm too broken to handle the truth,
and I'm tired of people deciding what I can and can't know.
Elias was quiet. She heard him pull out a chair, sit down heavily. When he spoke again, his voice was raw. 3 payments behind. 30 days until the bank forecloses. We need $800 to stay current, and we've got maybe $200 in the cash box. The cattle won't sell for top dollar until spring, and winter's coming fast. So unless I can work a miracle, we're going to lose everything. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. There's your truth. Happy now? Lydia turned to face him. Elias sat with his head in his hands, looking more defeated than she'd ever seen him. This was the man who'd offered her a chance when nobody else would. The man who'd fired Wade for threatening her. The man who was trying so hard to hold everything together that he was breaking under the weight. No, she said quietly. I'm not happy. But I'm glad you told me.
She set a plate in front of him. Eggs, bacon, biscuits salvaged from the chaos. Elias looked at the food like he didn't recognize it. "You're still cooking for me, after everything." "I said I don't quit." Lydia poured him coffee. "And I meant it." Something in Elias's face softened. He picked up his fork, took a bite, and closed his eyes. "God, this is good. How do you make eggs taste like this?" "Trade secret." Lydia fixed her own plate, sat across from him. "Now tell me about the debt. Who's holding the note?" "Samuel Brennan. Owns the bank in Silver Ridge and half the town besides." Elias took another bite. "My father borrowed from him to buy more land 5 years ago. Said we needed to expand to compete. But the land was worthless. Rock and scrub. Couldn't graze cattle on it if we tried. By the time father figured it out, it was too late. Brennan had us locked in." "Locked in how?" "The contract says if we miss 3 consecutive payments, Brennan gets the ranch. All of it. The house, the land, the cattle. Everything." Elias's jaw tightened. "I think father knew. I think he knew Brennan tricked him, but he couldn't admit it. So he kept borrowing, kept making promises, and when the horse kicked him, he trailed off. Sometimes I wonder if it was really an accident." The implication hit Lydia like a punch. "You think your father—" "I don't know what I think." Elias pushed his plate away, suddenly unable to eat. "All I know is Holden and I have been killing ourselves for 2 years trying to fix this, and we're still losing. Wade was just one more problem in a long line of problems. And now he's going to come back with Garrett, and they're going to make things worse. And I don't—" His voice cracked. "I don't know how much more I can take." Lydia reached across the table without thinking, covered his hand with hers. Elias looked down at their joined hands, his eyes widening slightly, but he didn't pull away. "You're not alone," she said. "Not anymore."
"Lydia, I mean it." She squeezed his hand. "You gave me a chance when nobody else would. Let me return the favor."
Before Elias could respond, the door opened. Holden stood there, his face carefully blank. His eyes dropped to their joined hands, and something flickered across his face, too quick to read. "The north fence is down. Cattle scattered. I need help bringing them back before they wander onto Brennan's land." Elias pulled his hand away, stood. "How many are out? 20, maybe 25? If Brennan gets them, he'll claim them as payment on the debt." Elias grabbed his hat. "Get Danny and the others. We need to move, fast." "Danny's already out there. Pete too. But we need more hands." Holden looked at Lydia. "Can you ride?" Lydia's heart lurched. My leg." "I'm not asking if you can run a race. I'm asking if you can sit on a horse and help us move cattle." Holden's voice was urgent, not cruel. "Because right now, we need every person we've got."
"I can ride."
The words came out before Lydia could think them through. She hadn't been on a horse since the accident, hadn't trusted her leg to hold her. But the desperation in Holden's face, the exhaustion in Elias's, they needed her. "Then come on." Holden was already moving. "We're wasting time." The barn smelled of hay and horses and leather. Holden saddled a gentle-looking mare, explaining as he worked. "Her name's Daisy. She's old, steady, won't spook. Just hold the reins. Let her follow the others. If your leg gives out, grab the saddle horn. Don't try to be a hero." Lydia nodded, her mouth too dry to speak. Elias appeared with 2 more horses, already mounted. He looked at Lydia, his expression unreadable. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." She took the reins from Holden, put her good foot in the stirrup. The hardest part was swinging her twisted leg over. Pain shot through her hip, and for a moment she thought she'd fall.
But then she was up, seated, and Daisy shifted beneath her, but didn't bolt.
"You good?" Holden asked, already mounting his own horse. "I'm good." They rode out together, the 3 of them and 2 ranch hands Lydia hadn't met.
The land stretched out in rolling hills and scrub, and in the distance she could see the scattered cattle. It took an hour to round them up, an hour of Lydia's legs screaming and her hands aching from gripping the reins. But she didn't complain. She followed Elias's instructions, moved when he told her to move, and slowly, so slowly, the cattle came together. They were driving the last few head back when Lydia saw the riders. 4 men on horses, watching from a ridge. One of them was Wade. Another was Garrett. The other 2 she didn't recognize, but something about them made her skin crawl. "Elias," she called. "Company." Elias followed her gaze and cursed. "Keep moving. Don't stop for anything."
But the riders came down from the ridge, cutting off their path. Wade sat at the front, a rifle across his saddle. His face was bruised. Had Holden hit him before he left? And his smile was ugly.
"Well, look at this. The cripple on a horse. What's next? A one-legged man in a dance hall?" Lydia's hands tightened on the reins. Daisy shifted nervously beneath her, sensing the tension. "Move aside, Wade." Elias's voice was steady, but Lydia could see his hand hovering near his own rifle. "This is still my land." "For now." Wade gestured to the man beside him, tall, well-dressed, with cold eyes. "Mr. Brennan here seems to think it'll be his land soon enough." Lydia's blood went cold. Samuel Brennan, the banker who held their debt. Brennan urged his horse forward. He looked like a snake wearing human skin, all smooth words and calculating eyes. "Elias, Holden, good to see you boys working so hard. Though I have to wonder, why bother? You know you can't make the payment."
"We'll make it," Elias said, but his voice lacked conviction.
"Will you?" Brennan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Because from where I'm sitting, you're 3 payments behind and running out of time. Maybe it's time to face facts. Your father made bad decisions, and now you're paying the price. Best to cut your losses. Walk away while you still can." "This ranch isn't for sale." Holden moved his horse between Brennan and Elias. "And it never will be." "Everything's for sale at the right price, boy." Brennan's gaze shifted to Lydia. "I see you've hired new help. Pretty thing, despite the leg. Tell me, darling, do you know you're working for a sinking ship?" Lydia met his eyes, refusing to flinch. "I know exactly where I'm working, and I know the difference between an honest man and a snake in a suit." Wade laughed. Brennan's smile froze. "Careful, girl. You're new here. You don't understand how things work." "I understand plenty."
Lydia's voice was steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs.
"I understand you're trying to intimidate us. I understand you want this ranch. And I understand you're not going to get it." Brennan's eyes narrowed. "Elias, you should teach your help some respect." "My help is fine." Elias moved his horse forward, flanking Lydia. "Now move aside. We've got cattle to pen." For a moment, Lydia thought Brennan would refuse. She saw his hand move toward his belt, saw Wade's rifle shift. But then Brennan smiled again, that cold, calculated smile. 30 days, Elias. That's all you've got. And when you can't pay, I'll own everything, including that pretty little cook of yours." He turned his horse. "Come on, boys. Let them enjoy their last month of freedom." The 4 riders left, but Wade looked back once, his eyes promising violence. When they were gone, Lydia realized she was shaking so hard she could barely hold the reins. "You all right?" Elias asked. "No," her voice came out thin, "but I will be." They drove the cattle home in silence. By the time they reached the ranch, Lydia's leg had gone numb and her hands were raw. Holden helped her down from the horse, and she barely kept from collapsing. "You did good," he said quietly. "Better than good. I feel like I'm going to throw up." "That's normal after your first confrontation with Brennan." Holden steadied her as she found her footing. "The man's a vulture. He's been circling us for 2 years, waiting for us to fail. He's not going to win, Lydia said. We won't let him. Holden studied her face. You really mean that? I really do. Something shifted in Holden's expression. A wall coming down. Just a crack. Then maybe we've got a chance after all. That night, after dinner was finished and the brothers had gone to bed, Lydia sat in her cabin and counted her savings. $43. Everything she had in the world.
It wasn't enough to help with the debt. Wasn't enough to matter. But it was something. She pulled out paper and a pencil, started making a list. Ways to save money. Ways to earn more. Ways to stretch what they had. The ranch hands ate too much, wasted food. She could change that. The kitchen ran inefficiently. She could fix that too. Small things, maybe, but small things added up. She was so focused on her list that she didn't hear the knock until it came again, louder. Lydia opened the door to find Elias standing there, his face drawn. Can I come in? She stepped aside. Elias entered, his presence filling the small space. He looked around, at the neat bed, the clean floor, the fire burning steadily, and something in his face softened. You've made this place feel like a home. It's not much. It's more than it was. Elias turned to face her. I wanted to thank you. For today. For standing up to Brennan. He hesitated. For staying. I told you I don't quit. I know, but I also know I haven't given you much reason to stay. Elias took a breath. The truth is, I'm scared, Lydia. I'm terrified we're going to lose this place. That everything my father worked for, even his mistakes, will be gone. And I'll have failed him. Failed Holden. Failed everyone. Lydia moved closer, close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes, the fear he'd been holding back. You haven't failed anyone. You're still fighting. That's what matters. Is it? Elias's voice dropped to a whisper. Because sometimes I think fighting just means losing slower. Then we'll lose slower. Lydia reached up, touched his face. The gesture surprised both of them. But we won't give up. Not you, not me, not Holden. We're in this together now. Elias's hand came up, covered hers. His palm was warm, calloused from work, and for a moment they just stood there, connected by touch and exhaustion, and something neither of them could name. You're not what I expected, he said finally. What did you expect? Someone who'd break. His thumb moved across her knuckles. But you're the strongest person I've ever met. I'm not strong. I'm just stubborn. Same thing. Elias smiled, and it transformed his face. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be another long day. He left before Lydia could respond, closing the door softly behind him. She stood there for a long moment, her hand still warm from where he'd touched it, her heart doing things she didn't want to examine too closely. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. 30 days until they lost everything. 30 days to find a miracle. Lydia looked down at her list, at the $43 that wouldn't save anything, at the impossible task ahead. Then she picked up her pencil and kept writing. She'd survived 16 years of impossible. She could survive 30 more days. She couldn't sleep. Lydia lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through numbers that didn't add up. $800 in 30 days. Impossible. Unless she could find a way to make the impossible possible. At 4 a.m, she gave up trying to rest and went to the kitchen. By the time Elias came down at 5:30, she'd already prepared breakfast and had papers spread across the table. What's all this? He picked up one of the sheets, his eyes scanning her handwriting. Numbers. Lydia poured him coffee. I've been calculating what we spend on food for the ranch hands,
versus what we actually need. We're wasting about 40%. Between spoilage, oversized portions, and supplies we don't use, I can cut costs by at least $20 a week. Elias set down the paper, stared at her. You stayed up all night doing math? I stayed up all night trying to save your ranch. She pushed another sheet toward him. This is a list of things we can sell. Old equipment in the barn, furniture nobody's using, that wagon with the broken wheel that can be repaired. Another $100, maybe more. Lydia, and I talked to Danny yesterday. He said there's a cattle buyer coming through Cheyenne next week. If we can get 30 head there, we might get better prices than waiting for spring. Elias's hands trembled as he picked up the coffee cup. You've been here 4 days, and you're already trying to solve problems that have been drowning me for 2 years. Someone has to. Lydia met his eyes. Unless you'd prefer I just cook and stay quiet. That's not... Elias stopped, ran his hand through his hair. I don't know what to say. Say you'll try. Say we'll fight this together. Lydia reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of his. Say you won't give up. I won't give up. Elias's fingers closed over hers, warm and strong. Not if you're with me. The moment stretched between them, heavy with things neither of them could say. Then Holden's boots sounded on the stairs, and they pulled apart like they'd been caught doing something wrong. Holden stopped in the doorway, his eyes moving from the papers to their faces. What's going on? Lydia's been working on ways to save money. Elias handed him the papers. Take a look. Holden read in silence, his expression unreadable. When he finished, he looked at Lydia with something that might have been respect. This could work. The cattle sale especially. If we can get premium prices, we might clear $300. 300 out of 800, Elias said. Still not enough. It's a start. Lydia set plates in front of them. And I've been thinking about something else. The land your father bought from Brennan, the worthless land. Is it really worthless? The brothers exchanged a glance. What do you mean? Holden asked. I mean, Brennan wanted it badly enough to trap your father into buying it. Why? What's on that land that made it worth the trouble? Elias frowned. Nothing. It's all rock and scrub. Can't graze cattle, can't farm it, can't do anything with it. Then why did Brennan sell it to you instead of keeping it himself? Lydia pressed. Men like him don't give up valuable property, even if it looks worthless. Holden's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. She's right. Brennan's not stupid. If he engineered that deal, he had a reason. So we go look at the land. Lydia stood, ignoring the protest from her leg. Today. Now. Before Brennan figures out we're suspicious. Now? Elias looked at the breakfast. But the food will keep. This won't. Lydia was already moving toward the door. If there's something on that land worth money, we need to know. Today. They rode out within the hour. The land in question was 10 miles north, rocky terrain that grew worse the further they went. Lydia's legs screamed with every jolt, but she bit down on the pain and kept riding. Daisy followed the brothers' horses through narrow passes and over rough ground until they reached a plateau of bare rock and twisted juniper. This is it. Elias dismounted, his voice bitter. 500 acres of nothing. Father paid $3,000 for this. 3,000? Lydia's stomach dropped. That's more than the ranch was worth at the time, Holden finished. Brennan convinced Father it was the deal of a lifetime. Said there were rumors of silver deposits, water rights, something valuable. Father believed him. Lydia slid off Daisy, steadied herself against the horse. Her eyes swept the desolate landscape, looking for anything that might explain Brennan's interest. Rock, scrub, a few scraggly trees, nothing that screamed value. But then she saw it. A depression in the ground, maybe 20 feet across, with darker soil around the edges.
"What's that?" Holden followed her gaze. "Old sinkhole. Been there forever. Father almost lost a horse in it once." "Can we get closer?" They walked to the edge of the depression. Up close, Lydia could see it wasn't just a sinkhole. It was a collapsed tunnel, the remnants of old timber supports visible in the debris. Her heart started racing. Someone was mining here. Mining? Elias knelt at the edge, examining the exposed rock. For what? I don't know, but look. Lydia pointed to the timber. That wood's not that old. Maybe 10, 15 years? Someone was working this site recently. Holden's face had gone pale. If there's a mine on this property, and Brennan knows about it, then he's been waiting for us to default, so he can take it back and work it himself. Elias stood, his jaw tight. That son of a bitch. He planned this from the beginning. We don't know for sure there's anything valuable here, Lydia cautioned. But we can find out. Is there an assayer in Silver Ridge? Old Tom Burton. He's half blind and drinks too much, but he knows rock. Holden was already moving toward his horse. If we bring him samples, Brennan will know within the hour, Elias cut in. Burton's been in Brennan's pocket for years. We need someone else. Cheyenne, Lydia said. The cattle buyer Danny mentioned. He's coming from Cheyenne. There must be assayers there. We take samples, make it look like we're just going for the cattle sale, and get the rock tested without Brennan knowing. Elias looked at her like she'd just solved a puzzle he'd been working on for years. You're brilliant. I'm practical. But Lydia felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. How long to get to Cheyenne? 2 days hard riding, 1 if we push. Holden was already gathering rocks, stuffing them into a saddlebag. But we can't all go. Someone needs to stay with the ranch. I'll stay. The words came out before Lydia could think them through. You two go. I'll handle things here. Lydia, if Wade comes back, then I'll deal with him the same way I did last time. She met Elias's eyes. You need to do this, both of you, and I'm not helpless. I never said you were, but Elias's face was tight with worry. If anything happens, nothing's going to happen. I've survived worse than a drunk ranch hand with a grudge. Lydia moved to Daisy, prepared to mount. Now let's get back. You need to pack, and I need to prepare enough food for your trip. They rode back faster than they'd come. Lydia's leg was on fire by the time they reached the ranch, but she didn't let it show. She went straight to the kitchen and started preparing travel food while the brothers packed. Dried meat, hardtack, cheese that would last, coffee. Everything they'd need for a fast trip. She was wrapping the last package when Elias came down, his saddlebags over his shoulder. We'll be back in 3 days. 4 at most. I'll be here. Livia handed him the food. And Elias, be careful. If Brennan finds out what you're doing, he won't. But Elias's hand lingered on hers as he took the package. Livia, I need to tell you something. In case... Don't. She pulled her hand back. Don't say anything that sounds like goodbye. You're coming back. That's all that matters. Elias's blue eyes searched her face. For a moment, she thought he'd argue. Then he nodded. You're right. I'll see you in 3 days. He left before she could respond. Holden appeared next, his own bags packed. He paused in the doorway. Thank you. For thinking of the mine. For everything. He hesitated, then added, My brother's falling for you. You know that, right? Lydia's breath caught. Holden, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying be careful. With his heart and yours. Holden's expression was serious. Because if this goes bad, if we lose the ranch,
Elias is going to blame himself. And I don't want him losing you, too." Before Lydia could find words, Holden was gone. She heard the horses leave, their hoofbeats fading into the distance. And then she was alone with Danny and Pete, and the crushing weight of responsibility. The first day passed slowly. Lydia cooked, cleaned, and managed the ranch hands with an efficiency that surprised even her. Danny was respectful, Pete was quiet, and the work got done. But every sound made her jump, every shadow made her think of Wade. The second day, her fears materialized. She was in the garden behind the house, harvesting the last of the vegetables before the frost killed them, when she heard the horses. 4 riders, moving fast. Her stomach dropped even before she recognized Wade's face. Lydia stood, the knife she'd been using for cutting vegetables suddenly a weapon in her hand. Wade dismounted, Garrett and 2 other men flanking him.
They looked worse than before. Dirty, desperate, dangerous. "Where's Elias?" Wade's words were slurred. Drunk again. "Not here. I can see that." Wade moved closer, stumbling slightly. "Ranch looks pretty empty. Just you and a couple of hands. Makes a man wonder what you're protecting." "Nothing that concerns you." Lydia's grip tightened on the knife. "Now leave, before I have Danny fetch the sheriff." Garrett laughed. "Sheriff's in Brennan's pocket, same as everyone else in this county. Nobody's coming to help you, girl." Wade's eyes fixed on the knife in her hand. "You planning to use that?" "If I have to." "See, I don't think you will." Wade lunged. Lydia slashed, felt the blade connect with his arm. Wade howled and jerked back, blood streaming through his fingers. "You bitch!" Garrett pulled his gun. "Drop the knife." Lydia's mind raced. She was outnumbered, outgunned, and Elias was 2 days away. But she'd be damned if she'd make it easy for them. "No," Garrett cocked the gun. "I said drop it." "And I said no." Lydia's voice was steady, even though her heart hammered against her ribs. "You want to shoot me? Go ahead. But Elias will hunt you down, and Holden will help him, and you'll spend the rest of your short lives running." Big talk for a cripple. But Garrett's hand wavered. Wade wrapped his bleeding arm with his bandana, his face twisted with rage. "Forget her. We came for the deed." "What deed?" Lydia asked, though ice was forming in her stomach. "The deed to the north property, the one Brennan wants." Wade moved toward the house. "We know Elias keeps important papers in his office. We're going to find it and deliver it to Mr. Brennan. Consider it a down payment on what you all owe." "You can't just steal—" "Watch us." Wade pushed past her. Garrett kept his gun trained on Lydia, while the other 2 men followed Wade inside. She heard them ransacking the house, throwing furniture, breaking things. Danny appeared from the barn, took one look at the situation, and started toward them. Garrett swung the gun in his direction. "Stay back, old man. This doesn't concern you." "The hell it doesn't." But Danny stopped, his weathered face creased with worry. "Miss Lydia, you all right?" "I'm fine." The lie tasted bitter. "Danny, go get Pete. Ride to Silver Ridge if you have to. Find help." "I'm not leaving you." "Go!" Lydia's voice cracked like a whip. "That's an order." Danny hesitated, then ran for the barn. Garrett shouted after him, but didn't shoot. Within seconds, Danny and Pete were on horses, riding hard toward town. Wade emerged from the house, triumphant, waving a rolled document. "Got it. The deed to the north property, signed and sealed. Brennan's gonna love this." Lydia's heart sank. If they took that deed, if they gave it to Brennan, he could claim the land before Elias even got back from Cheyenne. The mine, if there was a mine, would be Brennan's. Everything would be lost. "You can't take that." She moved toward Wade, ignoring Garrett's gun. "That's theft. That's—" Wade backhanded her. The blow sent her sprawling, her bad leg giving out beneath her. She hit the ground hard, tasting blood. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard Garrett's voice.
Wade, maybe we should...
Shut up. Wade stood over Lydia, the deed in one hand, his other hand reaching for his belt. I'm tired of this crippled bitch acting like she's better than us. Time someone taught her a lesson. Lydia's hand found a rock. She gripped it, waiting for Wade to come closer. If she was going down, she was taking him with her. But then a rifle shot cracked across the yard. Wade stumbled backward, clutching his leg. Blood spread across his pants, and he screamed in pain and rage. Holden stood at the edge of the property, his rifle still smoking. His face was a mask of fury. Get off my land. Now. Holden, Garrett started. I said now. Holden fired again, this time into the ground at Garrett's feet. Or the next one goes through your skull. Wade was hobbling toward his horse, the deed still clutched in his hand. Lydia pushed herself up, ignoring the pain exploding through her body, and lunged. She grabbed Wade's wrist, twisted hard. Wade howled and dropped the deed. Lydia snatched it up and stumbled backward, the paper clutched to her chest. You're going to regret that, Wade spat, blood and rage making his face monstrous. Brennan will hear about this. All of it. Tell him. Holden's voice was ice. Tell him we're not afraid of him anymore. Tell him we're done playing his games. And tell him if he sends anyone else to this ranch, I'll shoot first and bury the bodies later. Garrett and the others got Wade onto his horse. They left, but Wade's voice carried back across the distance. This isn't over. You hear me? This isn't over. When they were gone, Holden ran to Lydia. She was still on the ground, still clutching the deed, her face bleeding where Wade had struck her. Are you hurt? Lydia, talk to me. I'm fine, but her voice shook. How? Why are you back? We pushed the horses hard, got to Cheyenne in record time. The assayer took one look at our samples and offered to buy them on the spot. Holden helped her to her feet, his hands gentle despite the urgency. Lydia, there's gold on that north property. Not a lot, but enough to pay off our debt and have money left over. The assayer said there could be a viable mine if worked properly. Lydia's legs gave out. Holden caught her, held her steady. Gold? Gold. Holden's face broke into a grin, the first real smile she'd seen from him. Brennan's been waiting to steal a gold mine from us, but we found out first, and now we have proof. Where's Elias? Right here. Elias's voice came from behind them. He appeared from the side of the house, his face dark with fury. I heard Wade's threat. I heard everything. He moved to Lydia, his hands cupping her face, his eyes scanning the bruise already forming. Did he hurt you? Nothing I can't handle. But Lydia found herself leaning into his touch, her defenses crumbling. Elias, they tried to take the deed. They were going to give it to Brennan. But they didn't, because of you. Elias's thumb brushed across her cheekbone, gentle despite the anger in his voice. You protected our land. You protected everything. We all did. Lydia looked between the brothers. But what do we do now? Brennan knows we're suspicious. Wade will tell him everything. Then we move fast. Elias's face hardened with determination. We take the assayer's report to the bank tomorrow, prove the north property is valuable. We renegotiate the loan, get an extension, and start mining. Brennan loses, we win. It's not that simple, Holden said. Brennan owns the bank. He can refuse to renegotiate. Not if we go over his head. Lydia's mind was racing, pieces falling into place. Banks have boards, directors, people Brennan answers to. If we can prove he deliberately defrauded you, tried to steal valuable property, they'll have to act. The brothers stared at her. Elias's hands were still on her face, and suddenly she was aware of how close they were standing, how his eyes had gone soft with something that wasn't just gratitude. How did I ever manage without you? He whispered. Poorly from what I've seen. But Lydia's voice was gentle.
Now let me clean up this blood, and we'll plan our next move." That night, they sat around the kitchen table with papers and plans spread between them. The assayer's report was damning. Clear evidence of gold deposits, estimates of value, documentation of Brennan's knowledge of the mine when he sold the land. It was enough to destroy him if they used it right. "We ride to Cheyenne tomorrow," Elias said. "All of us. We take this to the Territorial Banking Board, file a formal complaint, and demand an investigation." "That's a 3-day trip," Holden pointed out. "And it'll take weeks for them to act." "We don't have weeks." Lydia traced the edge of the assayer's report. "We have 24 days until the payment is due. We need money now, not promises of future investigations." "So what do you suggest?" Elias asked. Lydia met his eyes. "We go to Brennan directly. We show him we know about the gold. We offer him a deal. He extends our loan, gives us time to develop the mine, and in exchange, we don't destroy his reputation by exposing his fraud." "That's blackmail," Holden said. "That's negotiation." Lydia's voice was hard. "He tried to steal from you. He sent Wade to terrorize me. He's been bleeding this ranch dry for 2 years. So yes, I'm suggesting we fight dirty. Because clean isn't working." Elias was quiet for a long moment. Then he started laughing, a sound of pure relief and admiration. "God, you're magnificent. Holden, she's absolutely magnificent." "I know." Holden was grinning too. "I think she might actually save us." "I'm not saving anyone," Lydia said firmly. "We're saving ourselves, together, as a team. No more secrets, no more fighting alone. Agreed?" "Agreed." Elias reached across the table, took her hand. His grip was warm, solid, real. "Tomorrow we end this, one way or another." Lydia squeezed back, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his fingers. 24 days until the deadline. One confrontation with Brennan. And after that, maybe, just maybe, a future worth fighting for. "Tomorrow," she echoed, "we end this." Morning came with frost thick on the windows and determination thick in the air. Lydia was dressed and in the kitchen by 4, her hands steady as she prepared breakfast, despite barely sleeping. Today would decide everything. The ranch, their future, whether everything she'd fought for would crumble or stand. Elias appeared first, already dressed for town. His face was set with a hardness she hadn't seen before, all business, and barely contained fury. "You don't have to come. Holden and I can handle Brennan." "Like hell you can." Lydia poured coffee, her voice brooking no argument. "I'm the one who figured out his game. I'm the one Wade threatened. And I'm damn well going to be there when we take him down." "She's right." Holden came down the stairs, the assayer's report tucked under his arm. "Besides, Brennan won't expect her. That gives us an advantage." They ate quickly, barely tasting the food. Danny had agreed to watch the ranch with Pete and 2 men they'd hired from the neighboring property. Insurance against Wade trying anything while they were gone. By 6, they were mounted and riding towards Silver Ridge, the morning air sharp enough to cut. The town was just waking when they arrived. Shopkeepers sweeping their stoops, the smell of fresh bread from the bakery, the sound of the blacksmith's hammer already ringing. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that 3 riders were about to upend the power structure of the entire county. Brennan's bank sat at the center of town, a 2-story brick building that looked more like a fortress than a place of business. Elias tied his horse, then helped Lydia dismount. His hands lingered on her waist, and their eyes met. "Whatever happens in there," he said quietly, "I want you to know." "Tell me after." Lydia squeezed his arm. "When we've won." They walked in together. The bank clerk, a nervous young man with ink-stained fingers, looked up and paled.
Mr. Brick, Mr. Holden, I'm afraid Mr. Brennan isn't.
He's here. Holden moved past the desk, heading for the stairs. We saw his carriage outside.
Wait, you can't just.
But they were already climbing.
Lydia's leg protested every step, but she forced herself to keep pace. They reached the second floor, found Brennan's office door, and Elias kicked it open without knocking.
Brennan looked up from his desk, his snake smile already in place. Elias, Holden, and the charming Miss Carver. To what do I owe this unexpected cut the act? Elias threw the assayer's report on the desk. We know about the gold. We know you've known about it for years. And we know you engineered everything. The bad land deal, the impossible loan terms, sending Wade to terrorize us, all so you could steal our property when we defaulted. Brennan's smile didn't falter, but his eyes went cold. He picked up the report, scanned it, then set it down carefully. This is quite the accusation. Do you have proof? The proof is in your hand. Holden moved closer, his voice dangerous. That report documents gold deposits on the north property. The same property you convinced our father to buy.
The same property you claimed was worthless.
I made no such claim. Your father chose to purchase that land of his own free will. Brennan leaned back in his chair, utterly unruffled. If he failed to properly survey it before the sale, that's hardly my fault. You knew what was there. Lydia's voice cut through the tension. You had it surveyed. That's why you pushed the sale so hard. Why you structured the loan to guarantee we'd default. You wanted us to fail, so you could take back land worth 10 times what you sold it for. Brennan's gaze shifted to her, assessing. You're quite clever for a crippled cook. I can see why Elias is so taken with you. Don't talk about her. Elias's hand moved to his belt, and Lydia knew he was fighting not to draw his gun. We're here to make you an offer. You extend our loan, give us 2 years to develop the mine, and we pay you back with interest. In exchange, we don't take this report to the Territorial Banking Board and destroy your reputation. Blackmail. Brennan's smile widened. How delightfully crude. He stood, moved to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. But you see, you've made a critical error. You assume I care about my reputation. You assume I'm afraid of some banking board investigation that might take months, even years to conclude. He turned back to face them. What you don't know is that I've already filed paperwork to foreclose on your property. As of this morning, you're in violation of your loan agreement, and I'm legally entitled to seize everything. Holden's face went white. That's impossible. We have 24 days. Had 24 days. Brennan pulled a document from his desk drawer. According to Clause 17, subsection B of your loan agreement, any attempt to sell, transfer, or otherwise encumber the collateral property constitutes immediate default.
And yesterday, you visited an assayer in Cheyenne.
That, gentlemen, constitutes an attempt to encumber the property for mining purposes. He held up the document. I have witnesses. I have documentation. And as of 8 o'clock this morning, the ranch belongs to me. The room tilted. Lydia grabbed the edge of Brennan's desk, her mind racing. This couldn't be happening. They'd been so careful, so smart. How had he known about Cheyenne? The assayer. Holden's voice was hollow. You paid him off. I pay everyone off. Brennan's smile was triumphant. Did you really think you could outmaneuver me? I've been playing this game since before you were born. The moment you walked into that assayer's office, he sent a telegram. I had my lawyers file the foreclosure papers immediately. He moved toward them, savoring their defeat. So thank you, Miss Carver, for your clever detective work. You've handed me a gold mine on a silver platter. Elias lunged. Holden caught him, held him back as Elias struggled and shouted. You bastard! That's our land! Our father's land! Your father was a fool, and so are you. Brennan returned to his desk, utterly calm. I'll give you until sundown to clear out. Take your personal belongings, your livestock, and that crippled cook you're so fond of. Everything else stays. Lydia's mind was spinning, searching for an angle, any angle. There had to be something they'd missed, some weakness in Brennan's position. Think, she commanded herself. Think like someone who's been backed into corners her whole life. And then it hit her. You don't own the ranch yet, she said quietly. Brennan looked at her, annoyed. I just explained. You explained that you filed foreclosure papers. But until a judge signs them, until the legal process is complete, the property still belongs to Elias and Holden. Lydia straightened, ignoring the pain shooting through her leg. Which means you've just committed fraud. You claimed ownership of property you don't legally possess. In front of 3 witnesses. Brennan's smile slipped. That's semantics. That's law. Lydia moved closer, her voice gaining strength. And here's what else is law. Clause 32 of the Territorial Banking Code. Any banker who knowingly misrepresents property value in a loan transaction is guilty of fraud and loses their charter. You told the Brick family this land was worthless. You have that in writing in the original loan documents. But you knew about the gold. You had survey reports. You lied to facilitate a fraudulent transaction. You can't prove that. Actually, we can. Holden had gone very still, and now he pulled a second document from his jacket. This is a survey report dated 6 months before our father bought the land. It documents gold deposits on the north property and is signed by a surveyor employed by Brennan Bank and Trust. We found it in our father's papers last night. Lydia's heart soared. They had him. They actually had him. Brennan's face had gone pale. Where did you... That's private bank property. Our father kept copies of everything. Elias's voice was deadly quiet. He might have been a fool, but he wasn't stupid. He knew you'd cheated him. He just didn't know how to fight back without losing everything. He pulled out his gun, not pointing it, just letting it rest in his hand. But we do. We know exactly how to fight back. You're threatening me. Brennan's voice had lost its smoothness. In my own office. I'm giving you a choice. Elias set the gun on the desk, barrel pointing away. You tear up those foreclosure papers. You extend our loan for 2 years at fair interest. And you sell us the mineral rights to the north property for $1. In exchange, we keep quiet about your fraud, and you keep your banking charter. And if I refuse, then we go to the territorial governor with both documents, Lydia said. We file criminal charges. We make sure every newspaper in Wyoming knows that Samuel Brennan built his fortune on fraud and theft. You'll lose everything. Your bank, your reputation, your freedom. Because fraud of this magnitude means prison time. The silence stretched. Brennan looked between the 3 of them, calculating odds, weighing options. Lydia could see him searching for an angle, a way out, and finding nothing. You've thought this through, he said finally. All night. Holden picked up the gun, handed it back to Elias. So what's it going to be? Do we have a deal? Or do we destroy you? Brennan sat down heavily. For the first time since they'd met him, he looked old, defeated. You drive a hard bargain. We learn from the best. Elias holstered his gun. Now get your lawyer in here and draw off the paperwork. We're not leaving until it's signed. It took 3 hours. 3 hours of lawyers and documents and negotiation. But by noon, they had everything. The loan extension, the mineral rights, a written agreement that Brennan would never interfere with their property again. Elias signed. Holden signed. Brennan signed, his hand shaking with barely suppressed rage. This isn't over, Brennan said as they prepared to leave. You've made an enemy today. No, Lydia turned back, her voice carrying all the weight of 16 years of being underestimated. "We ended an enemy today, and we did it without becoming like you." They walked out of the bank into blazing sunlight. The street was busy now, people going about their business, unaware that the balance of power in Silveridge had just shifted. Elias stopped on the boardwalk, turned to Lydia, and pulled her into an embrace that took her breath away. "You did it. God, Lydia, you did it. That clause about the banking code. How did you even know about that?" "I didn't." She was shaking, the adrenaline finally crashing through her. "I made it up."
Guessed it existed based on other banking laws I'd heard about. But it worked. It made him panic, made him think we had more ammunition than we did. Holden started laughing. "You bluffed. You bluffed Samuel Brennan." "We all did." Lydia looked between them. "But the survey report, that was real?" "Found it 2 nights ago when I was looking through Father's desk." Holden's face was bright with victory. "I was going to tell Elias, but then Wade showed up and everything went sideways. Thank God I remembered it this morning." Elias was still holding Lydia, his arms tight around her like he was afraid she'd disappear. "We should go home. Celebrate. Figure out our next steps." But Lydia had gone rigid. Over Elias's shoulder, she'd seen something that made her blood run cold. Wade, standing in the alley across the street, watching them. And he wasn't alone. Garrett stood with him, along with 3 other men, all of them armed. "Elias," her voice was tight, "we have company." Elias turned, saw them, and his hand moved to his gun. But Wade raised his hands, showing he wasn't drawing. "I just want to talk." "You lost that right when you attacked Lydia." Holden moved to stand beside his brother. "Keep walking, Wade, while you still can." "I'm done with Brennan," Wade's voice carried across the street. "He didn't pay me like he promised, left me and the boys with nothing while he lived high on his stolen money. So I figure, you folks just took him down, took everything he valued. That makes us allies." "We're not allies," Elias said. "You terrorized Lydia. You tried to steal our deed. You shot at us." "Yeah, I did, and I'm not asking for forgiveness," Wade spat into the dirt. "But I'm offering information. Brennan's not done with you. He's got something planned, something big. I don't know what, but I heard him talking to someone last night. Someone from Cheyenne. Someone with pull." Lydia's mind raced. What kind of pull? Territorial marshal kind of pull. Wade met her eyes. "Brennan's calling in favors, making accusations. He's going to have you arrested for something. I don't know what, but it's coming." "Why should we believe you?" Holden demanded. "Because I've got nothing left to lose." Wade's face twisted. "Brennan used me, threw me away when I wasn't useful anymore, just like he used you. At least you fought back. At least you won." He turned to leave, then paused. "Watch your backs. Brennan's a snake, and he's got venom left." He walked away, Garrett and the others following. Lydia watched them go, her mind spinning with this new threat. "We need to move fast," she said. "If Brennan's calling in the territorial marshal, then we get ahead of it." Elias was already moving toward the horses. "We file our own report first. Document everything Brennan did. Get our story on record before his lies can take root." They rode hard for Cheyenne, pushing the horses to their limits. By nightfall, they'd reached the territorial capital and found the marshal's office. A stern-faced man listened to their story, examined their documents, and finally nodded. "I'll look into this. Brennan's had complaints before, but nothing we could prove. If what you're saying is true—" "It's true." Lydia handed him the survey report. "Every word." The marshal studied her face, then Elias's, then Holden's. Whatever he saw there convinced him.
I'll send someone to Silver Ridge tomorrow. In the meantime, keep your heads down and your guns close. Men like Brennan don't go down easy." They found a hotel, 3 rooms side by side. Lydia collapsed onto the bed, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Her leg was on fire, her body ached, and she felt like she'd aged 10 years in one day. A knock came at her door. Elias's voice, quiet. "Can I come in?" She opened the door.
He looked as exhausted as she felt, but there was something else in his face, something raw and unguarded.
"I couldn't sleep without seeing you, without making sure you were real." He stepped inside, closed the door. "Lydia, what you did today. We did it together." "No, you led us. You figured out Brennan's game. You bluffed when we had nothing. You saved us." His voice cracked. "And I don't know how to thank you for that." "You already did." Lydia moved closer, close enough to feel the heat coming off him. "You gave me a chance when nobody else would. You saw me as something more than a cripple to be pitied. You made me part of something worth fighting for." "Is that all I did?" Elias's hand came up, cupped her face. "Because I know I did something else too." "What's that?" "I fell in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, honest and terrifying and true. Somewhere between the mercantile and the mine, between the kitchen and the confrontation with Brennan, I fell completely in love with you. And I don't know if that's what you want to hear, but I can't keep it inside anymore. Lydia's breath caught. 16 years of rejection, of being told she wasn't enough, of watching people turn away in disgust. And now this man, this strong, stubborn, beautiful man, was telling her he loved her. "Say something." Elias's voice was desperate. "Please, Lydia, say something." "I'm terrified." The truth came out in a whisper. "I'm terrified because I love you too. And I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be someone worth loving." "You already are." Elias pulled her close, his lips finding hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, then deeper as years of loneliness and longing poured out between them. When they finally broke apart, Lydia was crying. "I thought I'd spend my whole life alone," she said. "I thought nobody would ever see past my leg to who I really was." "I see you." Elias's thumb brushed away her tears. "I see all of you. The strength, the courage, the stubborn refusal to quit. That's who you are. Not your leg. Never your leg." She kissed him again, and this time there was no hesitation, no fear. Just 2 people who'd found each other against impossible odds, choosing to fight for something better. They rode back to the ranch 3 days later with news that the territorial marshal had arrested Brennan on fraud charges. The bank was under new management, their loan was secure, and the mine was theirs to develop. The impossible had become possible. Danny and Pete were waiting at the ranch, relief flooding their faces when they saw the 3 riders return. "We heard rumors in town, people saying Brennan was arrested, that the Brick brothers took him down." "We did." Holden dismounted, his face lighter than Lydia had ever seen it. "It's over. We won." That night they celebrated. Danny brought out a bottle of whiskey he'd been saving, Pete played a battered harmonica, and for the first time in 2 years, the ranch house felt like a home. Lydia cooked a feast, and they ate until they couldn't move, laughing and telling stories and letting themselves believe that maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind them. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, Elias found Lydia on the porch. She was wrapped in a blanket, looking out at the land that had almost been lost. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Too much to think about." She made room for him, and he sat beside her, his arm going around her shoulders. "Elias, what happens now? With us? What do you want to happen?" Lydia thought about the girl she'd been in Silver Ridge, standing in the rain, being told she wasn't welcome. She thought about the woman she'd become, stronger, fiercer, unafraid to fight for what mattered.
And she thought about the man beside her, who'd given her a chance when nobody else would.
I want to stay. I want to build something here, with you. But I need to know, is that what you want too?
Elias turned her to face him. Lydia Carver, I want to marry you. I want to wake up every morning knowing you're beside me. I want to build this ranch together, raise cattle and mine gold and make a life that's worth living. I want everything with you, if you'll have me. The proposal hung between them, and Lydia felt tears streaming down her face again. But these were different tears. Tears of joy, of disbelief, of finally being chosen.
Yes,
she whispered.
yes, I'll marry you.
He kissed her under the stars, and Lydia knew with absolute certainty that she'd never be invisible again, never be discarded, never be told she wasn't enough. She'd found her place, her purpose, and her love in the most unexpected way possible.
6 months later, they stood together in the small church in Silver Ridge, Lydia in a simple white dress and Elias in his Sunday best. Holden stood as witness. Martha from the Mercantile cried happy tears, and even Danny and Pete cleaned up for the occasion. The preacher spoke words about love and commitment, and when Elias kissed his bride, the whole church erupted in applause. The mine proved profitable, the ranch prospered, and the Brick family, now including one formerly crippled cook who'd saved them all, became a force to be reckoned with in Wyoming territory. Wade disappeared, Brennan went to prison, and Silver Ridge learned that underestimating someone because of how they walked was the fastest way to lose everything. And Lydia Carver Brick, standing on the porch of her home with her husband's arms around her and their future stretched out before them like an open road, finally understood what it meant to be seen, to be loved, and to be exactly enough, just as she was.